So we just got done watching the UFC 298 press conference, and it was a very entertaining one. Let me tell you, buddy. We saw Alexander Volkanovski walk out with this old man uniform. We saw Ilia Topuria get booed. We saw Ian Gary probably receive the most boos I've ever heard from a crowd. But let's go ahead and react to this in order. So right when the press conference starts, we see Ilia Topuria and Alexander Volkanovski have a back and forth, and Alexander Volkanovski just calls Ilia Topuria a McGregor wannabe, which I do see it, and I feel like there's a lot of people out there that see it as well. I think that Ilia Topuria right now, he's just doing whatever he needs to do to get in Alexander Volkanovski's head. But if I'm being completely honest, I feel like right now Alexander Volkanovski is in Ilia Topuria's head way more than Ilia is in Alexander's, if I'm just being completely honest. Ilia Topuria is kind of making this fight all or nothing for him. I mean, he's making like a whole documentary surrounding this fight. He went on his Instagram and updated his bio, being like an undefeated champion of the featherweight division, even though we know that that's not true. But I understand what he's doing. He's putting it all on the line right now, right? He's putting his literal reputation all on the line just so he can get into Alexander Volkanovski's head and have that mental advantage whenever he gets into the octagon. I respect him for it, but I think that that's a huge mistake, because if, you know, Ilia Topuria does come out with a loss in this fight, I think that's going to drastically affect his career. So of course, Ilia Topuria and Volkanovski have their back and forth on stage, and a whole bunch of people are just booing Ilia Topuria, which came to a surprise to me, in my opinion, because from my understanding, based off everything that I've seen online, I was expecting a lot more people out there to support Ilia Topuria, and it was the complete freaking opposite. It was the complete freaking opposite at the press conference. It seemed like the majority of the crowd were actually supporting Alexander Volkanovski instead of Ilia Topuria, which came as a complete surprise to me, if I'm being completely honest. Which is also crazy to me because it's not too long ago whenever we saw Volkanovski come to America and do these press conferences and get absolutely freaking booed because he was fighting people like Max Holloway, right, that were complete fan favorites. And yeah, it's a crazy turn of events that a lot of those people that were booing Alexander Volkanovski earlier on in his career are now complete fans of him. So that's great to see. One of the funniest moments in this press conference is whenever Cejudo and Merab started doing their back and forth, and Merab just whips out the Mexican flag from his pocket, and he just starts waving it up, and it's completely freaking backwards. It's like it's facing the wrong direction, and then he just casually just puts it around his back. Nobody asks him another question after that. Like, just like, okay, Merab, pull out the flag and put it over your back. We're just not gonna ask you any more questions from this point forward. Which I think is a pretty smart move, because obviously Merab is playing on the fact that Henry Cejudo does have a lot of haters, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that, you know, Henry Cejudo pretty much just turned his back on Mexican fighters like Brandon Moreno. And yeah, it's like almost turning against your own freaking people, and obviously Merab knows that, and he's gonna take full advantage of that, which I think is pretty freaking smart. You know what's crazy to me? It's crazy how inconsistent the internet is with like real life, because when they started asking Paulo Costa questions, the entire freaking like establishment just started going freaking crazy. They started chanting secret juice, right? So in my opinion, a lot of what we see on the internet is not true to real life, right? It's not true to real life at all, because in the internet, there's a lot of people out there that are criticizing the hell out of Paulo Costa and just hating on that man because he freaking pulls out of fights, which was, I think that that's a bad argument. I think that's a bad argument because obviously he was supposed to fight Khamzat Chimaev like a couple of months ago. But he rightfully pulled out because he had a freaking hole. He had a hole on his arm, guys. He had a freaking hole on his arm, and everybody started hating on him like, oh, this man just pulls out of fights. I'm just like, bro, in what scenario is it ever okay to walk into a professional bout against someone who's been training for months to take your head off with a staph infection in your arm? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So he rightfully pulls out. People started hating on him. And from my understanding on the internet, Paulo Costa is not a very popular personality, right? But whenever we see him in person, everybody goes crazy for him. So that just goes to show that the internet and real life are two completely different things. But what didn't came as a surprise to me is the crazy amount of hate that was shown towards Ian Gary. I have never heard an establishment boo one man altogether in unison like they did against Ian Gary. That was an absolutely crazy thing to witness. Look, Ian Gary, he's doing the right thing in my opinion, right? If his whole point is to make as much money as possible in the UFC, he's going about it the right way. Why? Because he completely just took on the role of being the heel, right? And it's something that you got to respect, and it's something that we need to analyze, right, as people that are watching the sport. Because if Ian Gary continues to be a hated person in the UFC, everybody is going to tune in to watch Ian Gary get beat up. The bigger mouth, right? Especially after a good performance, right? If he has a big mouth about it, well, more people are going to want to tune in to watch to his next fight to see him get beat up. And that's going to make him a whole lot of freaking money. That's going to make him a crazy amount of stupid money. People don't understand that haters in the UFC make the fighters rich. Haters in the UFC make the fighters rich because everybody tunes in to watch a person that they hate potentially get beat up, right? And so the more haters show up for Ian Gary, it just makes his pockets bigger. And that's a fact. But it was absolutely crazy to see. It was absolutely crazy to witness Ian Gary. If I'm being completely honest, I think the moment kind of made him pretty uncomfortable because I don't think not one person in the world would ever be comfortable with an entire establishment freaking hating you. And that's the truth. I think that the moment definitely affected Ian Gary because whenever he just talked on the mic, it was like, just bring on the hate, yeah, like, and it sucks for that man. It sucks for him, but I think that a lot of what he's done in the past is like catching up to him, and unfortunate, but it is what it is. Ian Gary, just go ahead and deal with it. In my opinion, I thought that Ian Gary should have been doing a better job at like selling the fight because from my understanding, I thought that he had beef with Jeff Neal, but there was a question asked in the press conference about shaking hands or whatever, and Ian Gary was just like, "Yeah, I'll shake Jeff Neal's hand," and Jeff Neal's like, "Yeah, I'll shake your hands too, buddy." And it's kind of weird, right? Because Ian Gary has worn an entire T-shirt publicizing the fact that Jeff Neal has gone to jail before, which I thought was pretty interesting. But anyways, let's keep going. But I think the most interesting moment of this entire press conference was the fact that when somebody was asking Alexander Volkanovski a question, Ilia Topuria went up and grabbed Alexander Volkanovski's belt, and I think that it was pretty interesting. It was pretty interesting. I thought that Alexander Volkanovski handled the situation pretty well. You can see that he was pretty calm about it, and he didn't react the way that Jose Aldo did whenever McGregor took his belt. That he was just like grabbing and reaching, trying to grab his belt, and McGregor was just like I think that Volkanovski handled it pretty well. I think that was a little bit too try hard from Ilia Topuria. If I'm being like completely honest, apparently people out there are calling this Aldo McGregor-ish type situation, which I honestly don't really see it. If I'm being completely honest, I really do feel like Topuria is just trying to be like Conor McGregor, which is whatever, in my opinion. I know that Ilia Topuria is just doing whatever he needs to do to get into Alexander Volkanovski's head, so you can't really judge him for doing that because in a fight, like, you have to take every advantage you can, especially to break the disposition from your opponent. And like I said, there's a lot of people out there that are going to criticize him for it, but you got to understand that Ilia Topuria pretty much is just putting it all on the line right now, and it's either win big or lose big right now. He's going to either win big or lose big. But if I'm being like I said, completely honest, I feel like Alex is most likely going to come out with the win in this fight. But yeah, that's mostly everything that I wanted to cover on this video about the press conference. Let me know your favorite moment of the press conference down in the comment section below. And as always, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out and have a good one.